Hey everybody, it's Dr. Brown from Idaho BMI and Everest Surgical Institute. I had somebody send me a news story about Ozempic and a TikTok influencer or star named Remy Bader. I'm not familiar with her, but I read the news story, looked into it a little bit, and I've had several questions come up recently on this issue of these medications, and I thought I would address that in this brief video. Remy Bader has a history of prediabetes and weight gain and some binge eating issues. And she was started on Ozempic, which is one of the several medications that are a synthetic form of a naturally occurring hormone in the body called GLP-1 or glucagon-like peptide 1. She was on the medication for some time and I believe had some improvement in her symptoms. And at one point recently, I think she stopped the medication and she came out and has been very public on some news programs saying that since stopping the Ozempic, she's gained weight and her binge eating is much worse than it was before. And it's taken a lot of courage for her, I think, to be so public about this. And so I wanted to respond to the questions that I've received as to why would this happen? Well, again, Ozempic, it is one of the several medications that it's an analog of a naturally occurring substance in the body called GLP-1. GLP-1 is one of the several messengers or hormones that is released in the very inner lining of the intestine, cells called enteroendocrine cells. And these cells, you can think of them sort of as taste receptors, among other things. They are sensing what is inside of the intestines, what a person has eaten, and ultimately they transmit that signal in two main ways. One of them, and really the primary method of relaying this signal, is through the vagus nerve. Very important nerve. It's the primary access or pathway for signals between the brain and the gut. That's the main way that GLP-1 is signaling to the brain what is inside the intestines. The other way is that a smaller amount of it is released in a person's bloodstream, and it travels in the bloodstream, crosses the blood-brain barrier, and enters the brain and relays that message to several different centers in the brain. And in general, the idea is that this hormone, this chemical, signals to the brain that we've ingested nutrients, foods, and the effect of that signal is to suppress appetite, to increase satiety or feelings of satisfaction, and a person stops eating. Well, as we've spoken about in other videos, in obesity, insulin resistance, several of these metabolic issues, what you find is that vagus nerve, the signaling pathway, primary signaling pathway, is dysfunctional. It's not really working very well. So it makes sense that giving people this shot that releases this hormone would have this effect. The problem is it requires a very high level in the blood entering the brain to have the effect of weight loss and decreased appetite and cravings. A much, much higher level in the blood than is normally seen in a person. And in effect, when a person is doing these injections, they're injecting a high level of these hormones, it's really bypassing the normal system, the normal physiological system of communication between the gut and the brain. There is a temporary benefit. People lose weight. They're not as interested in food. The problem becomes when you remove that medication, there's a rebound. In essence, giving this medication, you're bypassing the normal system. That normal mechanism or pathway of signaling becomes somewhat dormant because it's not needed. That system is being overridden by these injections. And so when you stop the injection, the normal system, which in folks who are obese or struggle with weight and insulin resistance, it's already dysfunctional and somewhat blunted. And giving these drugs makes that fundamental problem even worse. So when a person stops the medication, stops giving themselves these shots, they don't have that same overriding, bypassing effect on the brain, and the rebound is pretty significant. So people gain the weight back. Studies have shown that. And the cravings, the hunger pains, it all comes back. And many people have said or reported subjectively that it's worse than it was before. And it makes sense from a physiological standpoint. So again, I have an open mind as far as there are scenarios where it may be appropriate to use these medications, but I think population-wide, most people, I think there are going to be drawbacks with these medications, this being one of them that Remy Bader has reported. So hopefully this is helpful, answers some questions. It makes sense. Really, the only way to date of restoring that signaling mechanism through the vagus nerve between the brain and the gut is bariatric surgery.